want to just very, very briefly introduce my good friend and teacher, Paul Gyodo Augustinelli. Paul Gyodo is a teacher in the White Plum lineage. In fact, Paul Gyodo is my teacher here in Boulder, Colorado, and we've known each other quite a long time. And his experience with Zen practice is long and deep and wide, but also in the workplace as an entrepreneur and a tech industry professional in numerous applications. Paul Gyodo's current project, the Unbound Program, as part of TEND's Unbound Program, really is focusing on the workplace and bringing mindfulness and awareness and some of the practices that we share to the forefront. In a note that we have when we posted this, among the focuses are time, money, and change. And those are all certainly, I'll speak for myself, and I imagine for most of us, time, money, and change are all real hot button topics for us. We don't have enough of two of them, and perhaps we have more than we want of one of them. So, by way of an introduction and kicking this off, I want to hand the talking stick to my friend Paul Gyodo. So, go take it away. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, Sean, and thanks everyone for being here. Yeah, it's really an honor and a privilege to be here presenting at the Zen Peacemakers group. My transmitting teacher, Shishin Roshi, was good friends, very good friends with Bernie Glassman, and I was fortunate enough to interact with Bernie on several occasions over the 20 years that I was practicing with Shishin. So this feels like family for me very, very much. Okay, yeah, I'd like to get a sense for the room and everyone's experience here. So if I could ask you if it's possible for you to turn your videos on, at least just for the next few minutes here, and then you can turn them back off. And if not, I understand you might be in a place that doesn't suit that. But I'd love to get a sense just for what the level of practice is. I'm sorry.
And Gyodo, if people would prefer not to or cannot turn on their video, they can also use the reactions button. There's a thumbs up or something like that they might be able to use too if you have questions that can be answered that easily.
Yeah. So we can just raise hands, emoji wise or physical wise. How many people here have a dedicated regular meditation practice, daily, weekly? So it looks like about half, I think. Okay, and maybe a little more than half. And how many have heard of mindfulness or engaged with mindfulness in some of these more recent digital channels, such as apps like Headspace or Calm? Has anyone engaged with those? Not so much, actually. The people who have, I think, the dedicated practice, maybe not so much. So, so good. So I'll orient, the presentation, accordingly. The TEND venture, which I've co-founded together with Chris Pennis, who's here in the virtual room, it was intended to bring a high quality, deep mindfulness meditation practice to people in their lives where they live and work now. There was a recognition that there are some digital channels, particularly these mindfulness apps, that have come up, and in by some measures are very popular. So they're giving people something in the way of mindfulness meditation practice. But we felt that there was an opportunity to go deeper with some very deeply informed practices from the Zen tradition, practices and principles, I should say, from the Zen tradition, and to present those in a way that's more accessible in daily life. So it really meets them in the places, the issues, the challenges that they have every day. So in our Zen parlance, we could say things like time and money and challenges with relationship and communication can appear as koans. They can appear as these struggles or internal challenges or discords that we can help people work with by turning them into their primary experience, pointing them into their primary experience with it. So not to try to cultivate a kind of a artificial state of calm, if you will, which we felt a lot of these apps were kind of doing or promising something like this, but to really guide them into a deeper practice that is also simultaneously more accessible. So that's been the aspiration of the 10 venture that we have. It was seeded, I'd like to mention, it was seeded as a venture by the Zen Caregiving Project in San Francisco, which was formerly called the Zen Hospice Project. And they are wonderfully deep Dharma-informed caregivers in the hospice, end of life, and caregiving space. And they developed and have developed quite a variety of practices to help people do mindful caregiving. And the moment came a couple of years ago when they aspired to reach a greater number of people, but they realized, and they did some studies on this, that people didn't identify as caregivers, so they weren't looking for help as caregivers. So there was kind of an obstacle to addressing, the market with the practices that they had available. So it was their board's idea to found a separate venture that would be able to bring these practices in a kind of modified way, you could say, to people where they live and work. So, like so. Our focus intent is on primary experience. That's kind of the essence, and that's what I'd like to step into in this session. Is to share some of the kind of the root pointing practices that we are developing in Tend to help people really turn to their primary experience and to explore their own capacities of mindfulness and meditation directly in a very accessible way. Our Unbound program is kind of developing, different products and applications of this form of direct pointing meditation. And Shoen mentioned time, money, change are some of the primary material I think we'll be working with. And we've developed part of a series on time specifically, but I wanted to use this session to get to a root of the direct pointing practices, something that we've called the one-step mindfulness, one-step mindfulness. So this session, I want to talk about one-step mindfulness. We'll talk about some of the principles of one-step mindfulness. And I'll bring in some of the practices, some of the very, very basic direct pointing practices to give us a flavor of it. And I'll also bring in, for this group, some of the Zen backing in terms of Zen principles and even phenomenology, understanding of the mind and how it works, understanding of how the mind creates experience, which is behind these practices. This is material that we don't share outwardly to the general public to make it more accessible. But for this group, I thought it would be interesting to share some of this background. So I'll be very interested to hear, how this lands for you, and there'll be points through the session that I'll invite you into some exercises and then invite perhaps some feedback along the way. Okay. 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 And next I'd like to do what I call attunements. So we've all of us have gotten used to doing these Zoom meetings over the last few years. And so we're all very familiar with this grid appearance on our screen. I don't know, I might be the only person on your screen, but I see all of you in the grid. You know what I mean. So these attunements are a way that I've developed to bring alive the virtual space that we all inhabit right now. We obviously are connected, you know, in this space visually, but we can bring it actually even more alive with these attunements. So again, I'll invite you to turn your camera on if that's accessible for you, and then I'll just walk us through these attunements. So first we attune to ourselves. Okay. So I invite you to close your eyes, sense into your body, feel where energy is flowing and where it is not flowing. Next, turn your attention to your breath. Breathing quietly from your belly, relax into soft inhales and deep exhales. For 3 out breaths, extend the exhale as long and deep as is comfortable for you. Your body is the vessel of your emotions. Feel into the qualities and nuances of the emotions you detect. There may be a single strong feeling present. There may be several. There may be an absence of feeling. Allow all emotional energy, flows, and blockages to be perfectly as they are. Continuing to presence your breath and emotional body, now take notice of your mental activity. Your mind racing, calm, open, inspired, spacious, contracted, stressed, looping. Allow your mind to be perfectly as it is. There's no fixed self, only the moment-by-moment experiencing of self and world. Next, we attune to others as individuals. Open your eyes and see the other faces on your screen. Spend a few moments with each person as is comfortable for you. Breathe into and out of your heart as you witness each other. My body senses your body. Your body senses my body. Effortlessly, our body minds come into more coherence. There's no fixed relation, only the moment-by-moment experiencing of relating. Now being attuned to self and others, we attune to the group. continuing to breathe and fully presence your own body and mind, witness the whole group as one. While sensing into the room or space where you're sitting right now, extend your knowing awareness to the rest of the group. Feel into the reality that all of us are present right now in the same spatial field. Your space extends outward from your body by the inch, by the foot, by the yard, by the mile, outward to encompass other homes, other spaces, other lands, other continents, and their inhabitants without gap or separation. Right now, be at the center of infinite space, knowingly joined by this group together. And all together we gasho. Okay. I see some smiles on people's faces. That's what arises for me with the attunements. Okay, so one-step mindfulness. We really just did it. And I'll say more. A one-step mindfulness is paying attention to your primary or first order experience. Right? So I'd like to make a distinction between first order experience, and then I'll call second order experience and third order experience. Okay? First order experience is the primary phenomena coming in through our sense organs. And we know that in the Buddhist tradition, the mind is considered a sense organ. So thoughts, thinkings, conceptual forms are akin to sights and sounds, other sensory forms. Okay? So all that is coming in through our six senses constitutes first order experience. Second order experience constitutes a family of reactions and responses to that first order experience. And then third order experience includes a greater sense of self-consciousness or self-awareness that establishes oneself in greater context of time and space. Okay. So an example might be you hear a crashing sound in your kitchen. Okay, the sound is the first order experience. Okay. Very quickly, what happens very quickly is a physical reaction might arise in your body, perhaps a startle reaction, and then some thought pattern might arise. Okay, some fear, or that's my daughter dropped a glass. An image might immediately appear. Okay, there's responses that arise from that sound. And then third order is going to be a layer of interpretation and story. I told her to be careful with the glass in the kitchen. I'm really angry at her. Boy, I wonder if she's okay. I wonder what's happened. And now a greater context kind of gets created, a bigger picture, if you will. Okay. So returning to first order experience, the sensory level is always available to us. Okay. I want to share some of that Buddhist, it's really phenomenology. It's kind of a model of the mind that informs this. And I'm going to share my screen quickly. Let's see, which one is it? Oh, here we go. Okay, let's see. So I think is everybody seeing? Let's see, a screen with a series of circles stacked on top of each other. Let's. And I've lost visual on people. So if somebody could give me a verbal. What's that?
No, we're not seeing.
Oh, you're not. Okay.
We're seeing chapter 4, one step many times.
Okay. It shared the wrong screen. Apologies. Let's try that again. This one. How about that?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Clark. So the there's a model of in Zen Buddhism called the nens. Nen is the word, and nen is translated as a thought impulse, or I like to broaden it to call it a feeling thought moment, a feeling thought moment. All right. And in Zen, we've identified, the tradition has identified three kinds of nen, which correspond to the first, second, and third order experience that I talked about. So the image that I'm showing right now shows a sequence of sensory experience that comes in first order experience, and then a kind of a reactive family of responses that happen moving on to the next first order and then the next second order, right? So that's a kind of a basic, we're building the basic kind of through line of consciousness, if you will. But things get much more complicated. And I'm going to make things really messy, and then I'm going to simplify them and just share kind of what we're, this is to give you a visual of kind of what we're doing in meditation. Okay. So first order to second order. Okay. Now we're going to introduce the third order. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So in a very simple kind of through line or simple world, we go sensory experience, then a reaction, and then our kind of, life story about it, or more interpretive level. What our self actually experiences, for the most part, is a movement from a third order to a third order to a third order to a third order. Okay, there's that self with continuity, and the primary experience happens, and then the secondary experience kind of happens, but it very quickly gets wrapped up into the third, so that our conscious experience appears to be just a succession of moments being carried forward by our third order Nan, our self consciousness. Okay, we're going to dial the microscope in a little bit more, and we see that one way of looking at this is that every third order Nan, as we move from third order to third order to third order, is itself informed by a first and a second order. Okay, that's one way to diagram it, which actually ends up looking like this. So each third order is informed by its preceding third order, which is informed by first and second order, and then there's new phenomena that are happening. So we've looked at the sky in the morning, we've said it's a beautiful day, and then we've noticed ourselves and become aware of ourselves making that observation that it's a beautiful day, and we've entered "it's a beautiful day" into the story of our day. Okay. The view of the clouds and the sky, first order Nen. It's a beautiful day, second order Nen. awareness of ourselves saying it's a beautiful day, and then working with that interpretation or folding that into our self sense for the day. Okay, what's happened to the sky? It's changed. We've sort of lost the cloud as we've moved to the second order and the third order nens, into the reaction response and then the interpretation story level. We've kind of lost it. Okay, but it's moved. So there are continually first order, oftentimes mediated consciously or unconsciously by second order, folding into third orders. Right. I think everybody can kind of get this, right? You're kind of getting it conceptually. So I'm offering this as a way to kind of bring it alive, in your experience, because how much of this are we really conscious of? Okay, now we get to the real mess. Okay, so here's where I'm gonna just point to our lower right third order nen down here. This is, let's say that we're really present with this in this moment, this feeling thought moment. This is informed not only by its preceding third order nen, not only by the moment first and second order nens that are directly informing it, but it has direct relationships with all preceding first and second order and third order nens. So I show this to meditation groups sometimes, and I say, does this look like it maybe describes your mind? And most of them are like, yeah. So I don't know about you, but this looks like, yeah, like this is going on. All right. Now, when we're really wrapped up, if we really just look at our minds, we can kind of see this. But if we don't look at our minds, we don't even see this at all. We think we're just like selves moving forward. So the first step is to look in and to see that something like this is happening. Okay, I'm going to take it one step forward and just say, Zen meditation is the practice of returning over and over to first order nen. Okay, you can see what I'm showing here is first order nens in sequence. Okay, continuing to return the bell, the bell, the bell, the pain, the sound, the sight, the sun, over and over and over again, so that the through line of consciousness is established as a sequence of first order nen awareness, with no filtering, obstacle, or impediment from second and third order nens. So this is called by Sakita, this comes from a famous Zen text by Sakita Roshi. Samadhi. He says, this is samadhi, first order nen after first order nen. And we cultivate samadhi in Zen meditation so that we can then go out and use that samadhi in the world. Those of you who practice Zen and have a practice know that this works. Okay? Zen practice works to do that. When you're able to cultivate the samadhi that comes from first order nen absorption, then it informs all of your activity in the world, even as second and third order nens now start to become more prominent in your mind. Right. So the way I look at this is that's meditation. That's dedicated meditation. Mindfulness is a pointer and practice of looking at the mind so that it sees the web. It sees everything here. It at least becomes aware of this. Okay. The practice is oftentimes to bring it to first order Nen, okay, to bring to first order Nen. But without, in a way, worrying about or getting in the way of second and third order Nens. Okay, it gives a little bit of background there. I want to tell a story about the power of being with primary experience, and then I'm going to go through the 4 pillars of one-step mindfulness that we've developed to articulate this. Right, the story is one that a few of you have heard already, but there's quite a few here who I'm unfamiliar with, so it will be new for most of you. But this is a true story of actually my teacher, Shishin Roshi, who, when he was he had his PhD in physics, and he was working at an oceanographic institute in San Diego, and he was solicited to be a participant in a study that the Navy was doing. They were developing a very low depth, very low temperature wetsuit for Navy divers to go very deep in the ocean. So they brought him in and they put him in the wetsuit, and they basically said, just go into this big tank we have, very cold water, and stay as long as you can. And when you can't take it anymore, rap on the window and we'll pull you up. So he did as he was told. He went down to the depths, and he had been practicing Zen for a few years, and he had the instruction from one of the koans, actually, that said, a monk asked the master, how do I transcend the extremes of hot and cold? Right, recognizing that these extreme conditions, are causing me problems. And the somewhat counterintuitive response from the master is, when hot, be hot, when cold, be cold. Now, what do we normally do? When we're cold, we go away from the cold and we try to get warmer. When we're too hot, we try to go away from the hot and try to get cooler, right? But no, he didn't have a choice here. Well, I guess he did have a choice, and probably everybody else who did the study just gutted it out until they couldn't take it any longer. What did he do? He went into the cold, went into it, and by into it, I mean he brought his awareness to primary experience of the cold. Didn't have to look far. It was right there for him. The feeling of the water on his body, the way currents would move across the wetsuit, the difference in gradients of temperature on his skin as certain currents would move, little air bubbles that kind of would come out of his nose and then creep through the lining of his mask. He became entirely absorbed in these minute, but I don't even want to use the word minute, because they can be really big. If you're totally absorbed in it, it becomes huge. So in these really rich and living immediate sensory experiences. Was he cold? Yeah. Really cold. Really, really felt it. A certain amount of time goes by and he hears a rap on the other side of the window, and they're telling him to come up. He comes up, he comes over, they take his mask off, and they look at him and they say, "What were you doing down there?" And he said, "What? I wasn't doing anything." It was the late 60s. He didn't want to talk about Zen or meditation to the Navy. Why? I was just doing what you told. I was staying. What happened? And they said, "Well, you've been down there for 45 minutes, which is 3 times longer than anybody has managed to stay down there." Right. That's the power of primary experience. And if you think you have to sit on a cushion for an hour or a day or 7 days to enter samadhi. You don't. You can enter samadhi by staying with primary experience. Okay. So our 4 pillars of one-step mindfulness, and I'm just going to flash this on the screen and then I'll come back and dig in. I think will be this one. First pillar, you are not your thoughts. Second pillar, you are always present. Third pillar, being aware of your attention changes everything. And pillar 4, just keep going, don't stop. Okay. Pillar 1, you're not your thoughts. Everyone right now can close your eyes and observe your thoughts as clouds moving through the sky. A very simple meditation. Many of you have perhaps done this before. Incredibly powerful. As soon as you find yourself engaging with a thought, you've entered into the cloud. Expand your awareness and identify as the sky of your awareness. The clouds move through you without disturbing the fundamental stillness and aliveness of your awareness. Okay, and return to the room. When we use our main 5 senses, I shouldn't say main 5 senses, our traditional 5 senses. Do we identify with the objects of our senses? When you see a tree, are you that tree? No. When you hear music, are you that music? No. Some of you who have meditated for a long time might say, yes, I am. And that's true as well. But our normal experience is that not, that these are externals that we have a subject-object relationship with. But what about our thoughts? It's not the same, is it? The thoughts are very personal. They're me. Right? That's me. That's having those thoughts. Okay. But that fundamental relationship with your thoughts ends up causing you a lot of problems. So I found it helpful to, as a way to support this, disidentification with your thoughts, And I don't even like using that word, because if I tell, you tell someone disidentify with your thoughts, how the hell do I do that? It's like telling someone to let go, such a, I don't know, superficial sort of, is that ever helpful to anyone? Let go. You just got to let go of that. Like, don't tell me what to do. As soon as you try to let go of something, now you're like, oh, what am I letting go of? You become more engaged with it, potentially. It takes an artful touch and the right angle on these experiences in order to really work with them in this way. So our thinking sense is kind of, well, let me put it this way. Our visual and our verbal senses, okay, are ones that are kind of our control sense and are very much involved with our self-understanding, okay, of all the 6 senses. Okay, the verbal, and the verbal is, I'm calling the verbal the mind sense is the verbal sense. So I'm oversimplifying a little bit, because thoughts are really made up of images and words, right? Basically, images and words. So it's a certain form of the oral sense in terms of verbal, and then it's a certain form of the visual sense in terms of, seeing yourself as the subject of your visual environment. Those are the components of, self-construction for the most part. They're the primary ones. So the visual and the verbal senses are ones that, have this kind of lock on the executive control mode of the self. So in any mindfulness meditation practice, I always encourage people to move their awareness from the visual and the verbal senses to the feeling and the hearing senses. Okay, those are the next 2 down, and then smell and taste are very powerful in their own right, and can certainly be the subject of mindfulness and meditation. But it's the feeling and the hearing senses, not verbal, but hearing in the sense of sounds, that give us the closest access in to primary experience. Okay, because a lot of the second and third order nens are really strong with the visual and the verbal sense. Okay. Yeah. To that, I'll actually introduce a little time check. Yeah. So there's a direct pointing exercise that I've done with respect to this first pillar about really seeing that you're not your thoughts, that really works with this visual sense. And those of you who have a meditation practice know that the where you put your gaze is really powerful. Okay, it really affects your mind, has a really powerful effect on your mind. So that's why instruction around the gaze is very precise in all of the meditative traditions. So here's something I'm just going to offer as something for your toolkit, is a way to activate your peripheral vision and to deactivate your kind of point focus vision, because that point focus vision is part of that, subjective control mode, right? So everybody can do this if you like, is to take your 2 fingers and place them in front of you, full extension of your arms, and then move the fingers equally side by side at full extension, and maintain the peripheral vision activation on them, and go as far as you can. You can wiggle your fingers, so it's at the full extent of your peripheral vision. Okay, and then I like to bring in all my fingers at this point to really maintain that peripheral field activation. Now you might be looking at me, the point focus might be going back and forth between me and then peripheral, so that's part of this. But if you can, just note what I'm doing and then go to your peripheral activation. Okay, and then you can actually create what's basically kind of a cone of peripheral field activation. Okay, now maintaining that, maintaining, drop the arms and drop them down, and then lower the gaze. Lower the gaze. And we return. So I'm curious how that was for you. I find a deep nervous system resting happens with this exercise. Any visuals? Actually, I'd be happy to open it up. Actually, if there's anybody who has a comment on any of the previous exercises that we just did, perhaps in the last bit around this pillar. The observing your thoughts as clouds, or this peripheral field activation. Anybody have any shares on that?
Feel free to go ahead and wave your hand if you'd like to share. We can see everybody in one screen.
I think I see. I'm sorry, I don't see your name. iPad 3. Are you? Yeah.
Yes, that's iPad 3. That's me. Huh? You're hearing me all right?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Kathy, and I have no experience with Zen meditation. So this is all very interesting to me. But I noticed in the first practices of awareness, and are they called the nons?
Nen, N-E-N.
I'm sorry, the nans. For whatever reason, that complexity that was being revealed really made me feel anxious on the inside, but that's something I'm working with now anyway. Yeah. Whereas this last practice seemed to calm me and allow me to sit more, when I lowered the gaze, sit more, less interfered with, if you want to call it that. Yeah. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And guess what? That anxiety is under there. It's happening. You just weren't aware of it. Now you're aware of it. Okay.
Oh, yes.
That generates that unconsciously, that complexity. So now you're aware of it, and now you can work with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay, we'll move on. We'll move on to the second pillar. You are always present. We have all of these practices to like bring us to, present, be present, just be present, and we just want to bring up in people's recognitions that they are always present, help you to recognize this. Right? So tune into your body right now. You can close your eyes and just tune into your body. Is your body present right now? Is your body in the past? Is your body in the future? No, your body's right here. Okay. Your body is effortlessly present, always. Now notice your mind. How present is it? What's your continuity of attention with first order experience? Okay, maybe not fully here. The mind tends to be distant from the present in a way that the body never is. So one thing is always, if you want to be present, you recognize that you're scattered and you want to be present, tune into your body. Anywhere is great. The breath is the best because all numbers of reasons. It connects with your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. It connects your insides and your outsides. It balances and connects your gut with your heart, with your head. So many reasons for the breath. And that's why that's the primary object of attention in all the meditative traditions going back thousands of years. Okay, but it can be any part of your body. So now, if your mind isn't present, can you be present with your mind not being present? Are you scattered? Be scattered. Are you distracted? Be distracted. Are you confused? Be confused with your whole being. I'm really confused right now. Oh my God. My mind's all over the place. I am really distracted, really scattered. Okay, you're always present. Oh, pillar 3, being aware of your attention changes everything. Okay. So for this one, I want to do a couple of exercises. So first, bring your attention to your hands. Okay. Move them around, clench them, unclench them. Just observe how they look, how they feel. Feel them from the inside. And spend 20 seconds. Okay, next, let your attention wander wherever it will for 30 seconds. External sights and sounds, inner thoughts or feelings. And gaze can wander. Okay, and return your attention here. And now I'd like you to reflect for a moment on the quality of attention, the quality of your mind that you experienced while engaged in both of those last two exercises. Were you more awake to energy and information coming in? Did you feel less of a nagging sense that you should be doing something else with your mind? I'm not getting any nods or head shakes, but I am seeing a few smiles, so I'm going to take that as a yes. Yeah, so if so, the reason is that you chose where to put your attention and you were aware of it. Right? They were both very different forms of object attention. In one, you were paying attention to your hands, in the other, it was wandering. Okay. But the awareness of what you were doing was the same. I had created a frame for that, and I had given instruction around that. So that pointer just brought your awareness to your attention in a way that transformed your experience of it. And that's why choosing where to put your attention, that's why it's so powerful. Okay. Now, sometimes the message comes through in meditation practices or mindfulness practices is you have to keep turning your attention to this thing, as if doing that is the only valuable thing that you're doing. And if you don't do that, then you're failing. That's actually not true. The real power is that you're being made aware of where your attention is. So when we give the instruction to count your breaths to 10 and then go back to 1 when you get to 10, and when you lose count, when you notice you've lost count, you go back to 1. It's probably, everybody here has probably gotten that level of basic meditation instruction. Well, then if they don't get the next part, they think, well, I'm really not good at this because, God damn it, I didn't make it to 10 in 30 minutes. I didn't even make it to 5. Guess what? If you made it to 3 or 5 100 times in that 30 minutes, and 100 times you became aware of where your attention was and you brought it back to 1, by golly, that is a fantastic meditation. You are doing it. You've become aware of your volitional attention and exercised it over and over again. And you've also become aware of these other non-volitional forms of attention that happen when something grabs us, or we have a habit pattern of what we're going to pay attention to, right? Perhaps in our mind too. And we notice that. The noticing is the important thing. The noticing is the important thing. That is what up-levels the consciousness. Remember, thoughts are also first-order NEN. Thoughts are also primary experience. Okay? They're sense objects coming in. You are not your thoughts, the first pillar. Okay? So paying attention to primary experience also means paying attention to thoughts as thoughts. And when you do that, everything changes in your consciousness. Okay, the fourth pillar is just keep going. Don't stop. Okay, primary experience never stops happening until you're dead. As long as you're alive, as long as you're a body with these senses, you are immersed in primary phenomenal experience as if you're standing under a waterfall, right? You're completely inundated. So there's no effort involved in paying attention to primary experience other than just paying attention to it. Yeah, it's right here. Now there's the neuroscientists have kind of identified a couple of modes of attention, like and they call it attention as resource and attention as experience. Right? The attention as resource is one where we have limited attentional capacity, right? It has to do with our energy levels. It has to do with our mental acuity, all these things that we're very familiar with. And we're also familiar with being inundated and overwhelmed with stimuli that take our attention, social media, digital channels, all our life, busy minds. Okay. And so this attentional resource capacity can be depleted, and then we can feel a strain. So that's true. Yes, that is true. But there's also another mode, which is attention as resource, which is just being. Okay. Just being with. There's no energy needed to be exerted internally or upon the world just to pay attention. So don't let don't let people tell you that you don't have it, that you don't have what it takes. You have it. It's your intrinsic native capacity to pay attention. Another aspect of this pillar that I like to bring out, there's the just keep going, right? Just keep going. Just keep paying attention over and over again, is the don't stop. And I like to bring out this sort of version of it, which is a little bit at an angle to the just keep going, because oftentimes we have this internalized voice that we're supposed to stop doing something. We're supposed to stop thinking. We're supposed to stop being distracted or stop being confused or stop being something, stop feeling something. So like I say, don't stop anything. Don't try to stop anything. Just keep going, just keep being, just being attentive. Yeah, there was this study that came out, I think it was 2014, so it goes back a ways. And it was about these people, and I think they were younger in the 25 to 35 range, if I'm remembering right. And they were brought into a room, and they were sat down at a table, and there was a device that administered a painful electric shock, and that's the only thing in the room. So they were brought in, and they said, well, we just need you to sit there and just wait here for, I think they said like 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, not long. And this device will administer a painful electric shock to you if you want to do it. So, something like 65% of males administered a painful electric shock to themselves instead of just sitting quietly with themselves, right? This was like mind-bogglingly disturbing to me when I read this study. And I see people smiling because we can relate, right? And it was something like 42% of women and 65% of men. So I'm like, yeah, right, we get that. But I'm actually on the other side of that now. I don't want that. I don't want to have, that sort of tendency, which all of us have, to be, sort of pathologize or convince us all that it's hard for us to do nothing. It's not hard to do nothing. Let's do it. Let's do it for 30 seconds. Let's just do nothing. There, you did it. Yeah, congratulations. Yeah. Let's celebrate us. Now, you might have had feelings come up. I did. It's like, oh my God, is this what they came for? Is this what they paid for? They're hating this. I had all sorts of stuff come up. But ultimately, wasn't that hard. Yeah. Okay. So we've got a bit more time. I think I would like to, let's see. Yeah, I'd like to open it up. I'd like to open it up for any comments or questions at this point.
And once again, we can see everybody. So if you want to wave your actual hand, or under reactions, there's an electronic hand, if you prefer that, and then you can unmute yourself and share.
Yeah, and I'd really, just love to hear your experience too. If you, I'm just curious. Klaus Peter?
Yeah. Hi, Paul. Thank you very much for your, I'd like to invoke Bernie Glassman, who I ran into the steps of the Capitol back in 1994. But I have some glasses that were developed by the US federal government that have, if you can see, peripheral LEDs here.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'd loved having the experience with you with peripheral exercise. So I have an ice skating practice and a dance practice, and I'll be going to my dance group tomorrow. It's a silent dance group. And this peripheral vision is so important, but also your story about your wonderful master's cold water experience. I was just in the ice water here in the Baltic Sea in Helsinki. And I was exploring pushing these chunks of ice away from the dock where we were going in to kind of have our mikveh or our water experience and cool off after the sauna. And I found the experience of pushing the ice away from the dock as an opportunity, not only do service to those that were at the sauna, but also just to be present to that contrast between the water that was 0 degrees Celsius and the ice that was colder. So thank you so much for that story. So I really love that. So thank you.
Great. Thanks for that sharing, Klaus Peter. Yeah. Bill. Yeah.
Thank you, Gyodo and Jeff, also for hosting this. I was quite taken with your idea of having the privilege of teaching some beginner classes at the Zen Center of Denver, where I am. And in fact, I was going with a student last night with the breath counting and how, well, you just simply start over. But the fact that, the practice, we do say the practice is to really notice what is happening when you lose count. And I'm just, I guess, glad to hear that emphasis, because the practice isn't just counting numbers. It's what we're experiencing as we count.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. And it's good to see you again. Haven't seen you in a while. Yeah. It's, it's so true, right? Some of us have done instruction, for many years. And even if we do bring that point up about the awareness being the most important thing, still our human nature does tend to be really invested in, doing well at the keeping the count. So I think it's important to kind of overcorrect, actually, in the direction of not making that a project. Yeah. Thanks.
Well, yeah, and when I talked to the student, and it did occur to me to say that it is not counting numbers. It's just one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Two.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Anyone else? Mushin?
Kasho Gyodo. Thank you very much. Wonderful to see your face, hear your voice. A lovely presentation, a nice methodology. It'll all be forgotten in a moment, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Thanks, Mushin. It's really good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah. Anyone else showing?
Yeah, I don't want to get too stuck on diagrams, but I'm always charmed by diagrams. I relate to graphical representations, and I loved your diagrams of first, second, and third order NEN. But something came up for me when I was looking at the most the most complex one, the second to the last one before the lovely string of ones, which I just that by itself was so engaging and provocative. But the really messy one, I wanted to ask you, and because I have some experience of this, it seems that even the first, second, and third order in that very messy diagram, they were all more or less present time. If I get triggered by something that happens, a first order event in the present moment, but that it conjures when I was 10 years old, is that a different diagram than that one, or is it the same thing?
It's the same thing. That's a prior in the past, because up is in the past, right? It's the flow of consciousness through time. So that's one of the first, second, or third order NENs from the past that is looping down and informing that momentary third order NEN.
And so I would imagine the same thing would apply if I'm anxious about what's going to happen when I'm 5 years older than I am right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what's that anxiety based on? It's based on an image that was created in your mind about the future, or a fear of the unknown, which is arising in your present experience.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's all right here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You could say I took this out of my presentation because I thought it might be going too far, but basically it's all one NEN, right? Basically it's all one.
Yeah.
Shikantaza, for those of you who know the Zen practice, is single pointed awareness, where it's all right here, and it is all right here.
Well, I'm happy that you left it in. It's provocative. It's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
You provoked me. Okay, anybody else? Okay. There's I did, you just said you like diagrams shown, and there was one other diagram that I was going to share if we do have time, and it might be of interest. So I think I just will here, and I'll just spend just 2 or 3 minutes on this.
Yeah,
and,
we have time for that.
okay. In the interests of giving you another visualization that may be helpful. Okay, so I think everybody sees the time wave. So this is another visualization that's kind of based on Buddhist phenomenology, how phenomena rise and fall. In certain Buddhist texts, these are called eons. So there's the kind of the arising eon, the persisting eon, the passing eon, and the empty eon. And I like to look at this as, well, this is what happens with phenomena. So all first order NEN, phenomenal experience, actually, when we look closer into that, we can see that all phenomena are constantly changing. Constantly, right? Impermanence is one of the 3 seals, of our Zen Buddhist way. So nothing is fixed ever. It's every everything is always moving through, you could say these phenomenal phases: arising, persisting, passing, and then the empty eon or the open eon. So when we tune in to primary experience, the way we've talked about, when you're cold, be cold. In that story, what he was doing was really tuning into the changes, right? The movements of phenomena. Because that's how we experience things, is through relative shifts in states and conditions. So it's always this that we are being attentive to. And when you get really close to it, that helps us to anchor within the primary experience, is to follow, the rising and falling of phenomena intimately within the body, body-mind. Okay. So I've added these kind of injunctions, beneath each of these phases, to say, let come what is arising, let be what is persisting, let go what is passing, and then let not be what is empty. And we can enter into this type of relationship with all the phenomena of our lives. With relationships, with jobs, with emotions, with sensations. So I'm just going to leave that at that. That was some material that I brought in. I had alluded at the beginning to the time series. So I'd done a couple of sessions dedicated to working with time, and that was one that I brought in specifically, and I think it kind of correlates, to the material that I presented here. So I'll just leave you with that. Okay. So any final comments or questions? No? Oh, yes, Klaus Peter, and then also Bill.
Share a bit about Tend and what you're working on, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this, so thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you for that. Yes. So we've developed a beta application, an app, mindfulness app, that we intend to market into organizations to give them this type of training to, help with the mental wellness of everybody in the organization. We come out of this caregiving ethic, and so we're very explicit about integrating into the application and the practices values and intentionality. Okay, so it's not use this to be more mindful. It's not just that. It's about really being able to serve your purpose, your wellness, and then the organization's purpose and wellness too. It's meant to have that type of expanded focus in the app. So we've developed that, and we're working with partners to move that out into a pilot capacity. And we've been focused more on this for the last 4 months, has been an online channel that we're developing teachings, trainings, and practices similar to this, with very accessible and digestible kind of teachings and trainings. So like this whole hour and a half here, we would decompose into about 30 different, 2 or 3 minute, 1 to 3 minute pieces. And we're putting that out on various social channels. And then we're inviting people into more extended classes and sessions and programs. And we're kind of just developing those out right now as we speak. So it's going very well. We're in an early stage with respect to startup. So we're a startup, and we're also looking for investment, to help us kind of superpower our launch here, which is in progress. So, okay, thank you everyone. This has been great. I've enjoyed this.